So let's look at a couple of features and functions basically of the system that we've set up. We just have a bit of a welcome screen for the user, and then what we have is we've got 3 temperatures that will get displayed to the user the whole time. Okay, so we've got CT, which is the current temperature in the room. PT is the previous temperature from the previous reading, and ST is the set temperature, or basically the target temperature. So the temperature that we're looking to do some analysis on to either open and close the window. Okay, so basically we're at 20 degrees now, so what we're saying is if it's above 20 degrees we're going to open the window, if it's below 20 degrees we're going to close the window. And then these are just some comparisons of the current temperature and the previous temperature. Okay. So just in terms of our analog inputs, so we've got a potentiometer and we've got our temperature sensor. So obviously the temperature sensor is, giving our readings for the temperature, and we can kind of play around with how often we want to get a reading of the room. What I also have here is if you wanted just a different interface or user interface to change this set temperature, that kind of target temperature to open and close the window, I've introduced basically a potentiometer that will allow me to change this set temperature between 0 and 30 degrees. Okay, so you could set it to whatever you want, but kind of within a room we're going to say, right, we have basically a dial that we control between 0 and 20 degrees. So you'll see if I turn this around, what I have to do is turn it around and then I've got to click set. So I've got to use my push button to click set, and you'll see it'll change my reading. So if I bring it now kind of the full way around, click set, so it's now 30 degrees. So now what we'll be looking for is if the current temperature in the room is above 30 degrees, it will open the window. If I wanted to say, okay, that's too high, reduce it down a wee bit, press the push button, we're now at 25 degrees. So if this gets a little bit hotter in the room, we're going to open the window. If it's cooler than what that temperature is, then we're going to close the window. So this is just a bit of a user interface that allows us to change that target or that set temperature, and we can bring it the whole way down to 0 degrees, or we can bring it the whole way up to 30 degrees. So just a bit of a user interface rather than having to change that value within the code the whole time. So that's just one way we could potentially do it. Then basically for the LEDs, so like I said before, the green will light up if we're opening the window, and the red will light up while we're closing the window. Okay, you'll see the orange is just kind of periodically polling there or flashing, and that basically means every time it's taking a reading. So I have it set at the moment to take a reading basically every 10 seconds, I think it is. So it's just flashing basically to acknowledge that a reading has been taken. And you can see there this updates, the LCD updates as that reading gets taken. Okay, and you might have seen actually the green LED came on because we did get a high enough temperature to go ahead and open the window. Okay, so you can just basically see that's just what the LEDs are doing. It's just letting us know. There we go, it heated up again. So I'm just putting my hand over the temperature sensor here just to heat it up. So you can see basically that went on to let us know that we've heated up. And we can see the orange LED flashing to let us know that a reading has been taken, and we can essentially see the values getting updated here. So it's doing it every 20 seconds. Again, you can change that within the code if you want, or set up a user interface that could change that. The ideas are up to yourself. And basically we can see the temperatures are starting to come down again, and if we do get enough for a change, we'll basically, it needs to become lower than that temperature to actually get it to come down, but we'll see that in maybe another video. But the red light would come on. Okay, so just some LEDs, some indicators. You could have some buzzers, you could have more LEDs or whatever you want, or they could be flashing or do something different to let just basically the user know that some action is happening. Right, so just a couple of comments on the temperature sensor. So we've got a temperature sensor here. You can basically see it will start to sit quite nicely now in a minute. It'll start to settle quite nicely and stay at that temperature. Now we're only, to calculate the temperature there's a formula that's given with the data sheet, so that's kind of the first thing you need to know in terms of processing it. We're just displaying the results to 1 decimal point. So again, that'll, you won't see too much fluctuation, especially when you're rounding up to that amount. If you had went a couple more decimal points, you'll probably see it fluctuating a wee bit more, but there's no need for that super degree of accuracy. You'll see it'll settle quite nicely down between, look, that's its previous temperature, that's its current temperature, so it's settling quite nicely at that value. Now on the temperature sensor, it's hard to know, like in the room it is quite warm, so it could well be 24 degrees Celsius. The only way to do that would be to compare it against, calibrate it against an actual thermostat if you had it in the room as well, just to see if that's working out alright. But it does seem pretty good to me, and sure, it'll be good enough for this example. We can heat it up if we want. You can blow on it or get the hairdryer out, and rub it, and it will heat up from the body heat, and from keeping in close contact with it. You see there, starts to heat it up. I could probably get it up to about 30 degrees maybe at the moment with my hand, and then it does settle down gradually and quite nicely and smoothly back down to the correct temperature of the room. So it does seem fairly stable. It does seem to be working well, the temperature sensor. That's just a couple of things that we can do with it. Obviously, it's gradually decreasing there. We can see from its previous temperature down to its current temperature. I'm only taking a reading every 10 seconds. So, we'd be waiting just a wee while until it settles back down. But you can see it's coming down nicely there and kind of settling nicely. So that's just a couple of points on the temperature sensor.